All right, it's 12 o'clock here in Washington, D.C. So I'm Marcel Yeager from Career Valley. Thank you for joining. Please drop into the comments below and let me know where you're watching from, as I'd love to hear if we're spread out or where we're at today. Um, and at the very end of answering questions, I'm going to be sharing a roadmap to job search success, which it kind of gives you different prongs you should be touching on in your job search strategy, but will also help you figure out if there are things that you could be doing and aren't doing that will help you get your job faster. So I'm going to start with a question that has come up a lot recently with several clients. But while I go through that, I do want you to share your questions in the comments below, and I am going to answer them after that. So I look forward to seeing your questions. And don't be shy. I don't bite, I promise. And no question is a bad question. It could be about anything: resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviewing, any part of the job search process, even negotiation. So go for it. So first, I want to talk about this question, which is, what's the most defining moment of your career? I think it's a really pertinent question no matter where you're at, whether you're just starting, whether you're further along. And the reason is we so rarely take the time to really stop and think about it, if you know what I mean. So that could be, it can give you so much insight. And I'm going to give you an example from my own experience when I really thought about this question, which is probably my first job in public affairs and strategic communications. And the reason that I say that is it really helped me realize and develop my writing skills, and ability to create messages for different audiences in terms of the clients I was working with. Secondly, it taught me that I really juggle projects and clients, like many at the same time, instead of just working on one at a time, that I like that and do that fairly well. And that's been a thread throughout my experience. Just as it's been, same thing with the messaging for different audiences. I do it now. I've done it in all my jobs and help clients with that. And a third thing that's came out of that experience early in my career was really mentoring and helping with junior staff and internship mentoring and coaching, which is something, again, I've continued through all my jobs and to do today. So whatever your defining career moment has been can give you a lot of insight into what the threads are, I should say, throughout your career, what your strengths are, your capabilities are, and things you should be featuring most likely in your materials. So that's going to help you define your storyline once you figure out what that defining moment was for you and why. In some cases, it might be that you developed a whole new strategy or, operational standards, or a mentor might have taught you something that served you well in your career. But from that, try to pick out what those strengths are, and the skills and those you want to continue using and really enjoy using in your future career, because it can give you a lot of insight. So if you haven't thought about that yet, I do encourage you to figure out what that defining moment in your career has been and dig into that a bit. But now I'd love to answer some questions. So please drop some below in the comments, and also tell us where you're watching from. And I'll wait for a couple of those. And as we do, another thing to think about in terms of that question about defining your moment in your career would be to think about asking colleagues and even family and friends. So, because you might say, well, I know what my career defining moment is, but I have no idea what my real strengths and skills are. So think about what colleagues have shared with you, but also what do they come to you for? What problems do they ask you to solve? What kind of advice do they ask you for? What are you, kind of the go-to, let's say, person for? Um, and that might give you also some insight, but you really should ask colleagues that question. If you're having trouble figuring out what you're the go-to for, ask them, what do you think of coming to me for? What do you think I do really well? Then ask friends and family too, because you might be surprised by some of the answers. A lot of the things we do intuitively are not that obvious to us. So make sure and ask that question. You can learn an awful lot. So again, if you do have any questions, please drop them in. There's a lot of things that I could talk about, but I want to talk about things that are helpful to you. So please ask any questions you like. These kinds of strengths and so forth, you really want to pull out right into the top of your resume, feature them in your LinkedIn profile, not only in the skills section, but your about section, which used to be called summary. It's really important because these are the types of things that define you, make you different from someone else. You might have a lot of the same skills and look the same as someone else, right? Maybe they studied the same things, have had the same jobs, but these career defining moments that have developed your strengths and your skills and the things you love are really important for your story. So if you are having trouble with that, I encourage you to weave that into your story. And then those threads, again, going back to the threads that I discovered early in my career, and that clients have discovered over time, those naturally play into those capabilities. And those are the things that employers want to see. You might be a very technical oriented professional. You might be a developer, software engineer, but you might have amazing people management skills. And that's a combination that you don't see that often. So those two things might be something to feature, right? Maybe you're really good at getting into the weeds to figure out what a problem is, knowing there's a big problem, but then you're able to really dissect what that problem is and then bring it all together to develop a strategy and implement. That's another thing that not everybody can do. So these are some things just for you to think about that come to mind. Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We have a great question. During the COVID-19 pandemic, do you recommend any career progression? Yes. And I know that might sound crazy, but I've seen so many people, even in 2020 till now, getting jobs. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in their field, but I've seen people getting promoted, getting salary increases by leaving their jobs and going to other organizations and companies. The reason I say it's a good time for that is there are a lot of new let's say this way, employers have realized there are so many things they have to care about more, like employee engagement and really hiring the right people for the culture and keeping them there, and that they can be trained, in what they need to do. So I see a lot more flexibility right now. There's a lot more competition for jobs because there are people who are still on furlough, people who've been laid off. So there is increased competition in the market, especially in certain industries, and others are suffering, like hospitality and travel and restaurants, food and beverage. However, we are starting to see hiring in those places again. If you can take your skills and leverage them for something different, that's great too. Like I know that I worked with somebody who worked for a hospitality company, experienced a layoff, but then was able to take like the research and data analysis and strategy and operations skills she had developed there and morph that into a consulting career where a lot of clients might be within the travel and hospitality industry, but she's not working directly for a company there, in fear of possibly going through another round of layoffs again. So there's a lot of different things you can do to transform your skills into something different. Great question. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? And it's okay too to be specific if you have a particular, if you want to share what your goals are and your career progression or your skills, and ask, what else could I do? Do you have any recommendations for other industries or types of roles that might be, I can help with that as well. You're welcome. My pleasure. In that vein, one thing that comes to mind also is that if you've done, like we've worked with a lot of people who have a lot of skills in terms of relationship building, and that could go in so many different directions. I mean, you could do community outreach for a nonprofit or a foundation or external relations. At the same time, you could use that within an organization to help build a new, department or capability. A lot of big companies now are looking into developing innovative new products, but also just, capabilities within their business. So it's something you could do. I'm not sure I understand the question about industry, Molly. Could you expand a little bit? Sure. So like supply chain professionals are very good at logistics, of course, but also the whole end-to-end process of working with a lot of different cross-functional departments. So you're good at engaging stakeholders, you're good in figuring out problems and how to get things from, one place to another. So if you think about it, the things that come to my mind are like strategy and operations, any kind of like internal stakeholder management and engagement. I think that you can then take that, as I think you're mentioning here, to other industries. So don't, pigeonhole yourself into the industry you've been in. I would say that you should really think about complementary industries, like say you're in the banking or finance industry. Well, insurance and other industries touch that very closely. And there's probably, clients that you work with within financial services or banking. You could touch on any of those industries because of your familiarity with it. So, to take that skill somewhere else and think more broadly about industries is important. Machine learning, yes, that's a great, up and coming thing that everybody is getting involved in. And I think, again, employers are a lot more cognizant right now of looking at the soft skills people bringing people that have worked successfully remotely and proven themselves in that way and can teach them the rest. Now, you can go also, if you want to, and, go deeper, I would say you can talk to people who work in those industries or functions like supply chain, machine learning, and others, just to get an idea of where there might be gaps and how to, expand on your skills and learn. But also there's a lot of free courses now online on Coursera and LinkedIn Learning and Udemy and other platforms where you can be set to just jump into something, especially at a more senior role in that area, So talking to people is really important as well, and trying to figure out how to get in the door. We are at 12:15, so I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you'll come back next Friday as well. I am going to drop into the comments here the link to our roadmap for job search success. So grab that if you like. It just gives you some tips on how to manage different parts of the job search process. And you'll be subscribed to our newsletter where you'll get career advice, but you can unsubscribe at any time. So no worries about that. Again, thank you for watching, and please join us next Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Have a great week.